Hello and welcome to Endemic Times. My name is Amira. Are we headed for a global recession? Some people will say that we aren't, that everything is great, that the economy is fine, jobs are up, and that there is nothing to worry about. Well, if there's nothing to worry about, then why was the bulk of the World Economic Forum in Davos this week focused on our impending global recession? And why was the theme of the forum cooperation in a fragmented world? At a time when technological advancement gives us the opportunity to engage in and do business globally, why is this now being looked at as a risk? To put a really vague and pretty confusing topic simply, the problem is that the more divided economies become, the more at risk we are, here at home and abroad, of seeing the costs for basic necessities and things that are normally within a reasonable cost bracket skyrocket. This is why the consensus on the prospects for this year of 2023 are bleak here in the US and especially in the EU. Before I get into the details, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already, and a huge thank you to all of the new subscribers. Y'all make me smile. Now let's get into it. All of the chief economists surveyed at the World Economic Forum predicted a weak or very weak growth in 2023 for Europe, while 91% expect weak or very weak growth here in the United States. 2/3 of chief economists expect a worldwide recession in 2023 because of high inflation, low growth, high debt, and high fragmentation, which is creating an environment that reduces incentives for the investments needed to get back to growth and raise living standards for the world's most vulnerable. Expectations of China's growth are split between those that expect weak or strong growth. The last 3 years have greatly changed the global economic outlook and how economies interact with each other. While global economic integration occurred for several decades before the pandemic, the policies that have recently been put in place in the name of economic or national security are creating geoeconomic fragmentation. Basically, instead of working together, we're working against each other. This is happening because of the higher cost to import goods, the segmenting of markets, and the diminishing access to technology for skilled and unskilled labor, which is reducing productivity. All of this is why the IMF is projecting fragmentation to cost the global economy up to 7% of GDP. As these changes in the supply chain continue and the fragmentation leads to changes in the overall supply chain structure, it's the lower income consumers in advanced economies that are not going to have access to the usually cheaper imported goods from times past. You're probably thinking, what does that matter? Everything is cheap where I am. Well, the thing is that our global economy is just that. It's global. So when strains or changes occur, it's going to affect different parts of the economy. And what experts are seeing now is that this fragmentation is creating divisions where they shouldn't really be happening, and how those divisions are going to hamper the ability of developing economies to improve their living standards and reducing poverty. Instead of catching up to advanced economies, the developing world would fall further behind. We see this when it comes to humanitarian aid. Looking at Ukraine and all of the money and military aid that has been spent has drained resources from the US, UK, EU, and many other nations. And with that drain, it's hindering foreign aid that usually and should be going to nations that are struggling with much bigger issues that have been happening for much longer, related to things like war, famine, drought, flooding, civil discord, etc. I have covered many of these nations and their struggles in this playlist right here that I will link in the end if you want to learn more. But going back to Ukraine, that is one of the biggest areas of monetary drain happening now, and why we see the kinds of prices that we are seeing. Because this war is affecting global supply and movement of global supply, it's causing economies to change course, and that is changing the overall global landscape. These changes are something we haven't really seen since the end of the Cold War, and that is rival economic blocs. The actions that have been taken in regards to Russia and Ukraine, the restriction of gas supply, attacking a pipeline, sanctions, these are the actions that the West has taken over the last year that experts, and myself, were saying is only going to lead to shifts in the economic power dynamics and put the US and other Western nations at risk. And that is happening. If we look at China and Saudi Arabia, there has been for some time now what looks like the desire to have more cooperation between them. And this is leaving the US and other Western nations out, or at least at that risk. The US relies on a lot of imports as well, so as changes to our supply chain occur, it affects us. greatly. We saw what happened with just the pandemic. Imagine if the US is considered a lesser power, loses the strength of the dollar, and isn't able to integrate in the wider economic landscape. That's why something like global fragmentation, as vague and far away feeling as it may seem, is so important, because it's explaining our current situation and also the possible future that we could be looking at for later this year, next year, and even a decade from now. All of this explains the changes that we keep seeing and that keep happening more and more frequently. That is why keeping track of where we are now, seeing the warning signs, and paying attention is so important. There is a lot going on, and some would say that is part of the design. Keep us distracted, keep us working, keep us blinded to what is happening. A lot of this doesn't need to be happening the way that it is, and there are certain actions that could be taken today to help ease us into this precarious and unknown future. And that is calling a ceasefire and call for peace in Ukraine with Russia. It would solve so many of our immediate problems, but they can't have that now, can they? Well, thank you so much for watching. If you're wanting to learn more about this topic of global fragmentation, I have provided all of the links to the articles that were used in this video, along with a lot of the things that I was looking at when researching this topic. This was something new for me, so if you have any more insight or details to share, please feel free to comment down below. I love seeing your comments, and I am always excited to learn something new. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe, share with those you think might find this information helpful, and as always, stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.